August 2nd, 2006. A rooftop in the most dangerous city in Iraq. A Navy SEAL lies bleeding, shot in the face by an enemy sniper. His teammates rush to save him, but they're pinned down by enemy fire. Then, one man makes a decision that will cost him everything. He steps directly into the exact spot where his brother was just shot. The same kill zone, the same sniper angle. He knows he's about to die, but he does it anyway. This is the true story of Marc Allen Lee, and what happened on that rooftop will break your heart. Before we dive in, if you're new here, this channel tells real stories of courage and sacrifice. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the stories I share here will change how you see the world. Now, let me take you to Ramadi, Iraq, in the summer of 2006. Let me tell you about August 2nd, 2006, in Ramadi, Iraq. The sun hung low that day, casting long shadows across the devastated streets of what Time magazine had labeled the most dangerous city in Iraq. I want you to picture this place. The air thick with dust and the acrid smell of burning metal, a constant reminder that death lurked around every corner in this forsaken urban battlefield. Now, I need to introduce you to Aviation Ordnanceman 2nd Class Marc Allen Lee. He was moving through those narrow alleyways with his brothers from SEAL Team 3, Charlie Platoon, adjusting the weight of his Mk-48 machine gun as he went. They called themselves Task Unit Bruiser, and they were operating under the command of Lieutenant Commander Jocko Willink in the heart of insurgent-controlled territory. Marc was 28 years old, from Hood River, Oregon. Here's something you need to understand about him. He had dropped out of badass training once, back in 2001, unsure if he had what it took to be a Navy SEAL. For a year, he drove a shuttle bus for the Army in Virginia Beach, hating every moment, knowing he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. But let me tell you, Marc Lee was not a quitter at heart. He fought his way back, jumping through administrative hoops for 12 months until the Navy gave him another chance. In March 2004, he returned to badass with Class 251, and this time he excelled, placing second in his graduating class. So there he was 2 years later in the J Block area, about 1.5 kilometers east of Combat Outpost Falcon. Let me describe this place for you. A maze of sand-colored buildings with flat roofs, narrow streets barely wide enough for a vehicle to pass through, and countless windows that could hide enemy snipers. Al-Qaeda controlled this territory with an iron grip, and they weren't about to let it go without a fight. The mission was straightforward on paper, a cordon and search operation. Charlie Platoon would serve as combat advisors to the Iraqi Army partner force, clearing buildings and searching for insurgent weapons caches and hideouts. But here's the thing about Ramadi. Nothing was ever straightforward. Every doorway could hide an IED. Every pile of rubble might conceal a sniper. And the enemy had learned to coordinate their ambush with deadly precision. Now let me tell you about Marc's teammate, Aviation Ordnanceman 3rd Class Ryan Job, nicknamed Biggles by the other SEALs. He had positioned himself on a rooftop to provide overwatch. Ryan was a skilled operator with a quick wit, the kind of guy who could make his teammates laugh even in the worst situations. Picture him there, lying prone behind his Mk-48 machine gun, scanning the streets below through his scope, providing covering fire for the SEALs maneuvering in the narrow alleyways. The afternoon heat was oppressive, the kind that made your gear feel twice as heavy and turned every breath into an effort. Through his headset, Marc could hear the controlled breathing and low voices of his teammates as they communicated positions and cleared corners with practiced efficiency. I want you to understand something. These men had trained together for months, deployed together, and fought side by side through countless firefights. They knew each other's movements, could anticipate each other's actions, and trusted each other with their lives. Then, it happened. Suddenly, the crack of a rifle shot echoed off the concrete walls. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, bouncing between buildings in the cramped urban environment. Then came the radio call that every SEAL dreads. Man down on the roof. Ryan Job had been hit by an enemy sniper's bullet. The round had struck him in the face, and he was critically wounded, bleeding heavily on the exposed rooftop. The insurgent sniper had been watching, waiting for the perfect shot, and now Ryan's life hung in the balance. Here's what you need to understand. Without hesitation, Marc and his fellow SEALs from Charlie Platoon, along with members of SEAL Team 8 who were operating in the area, responded to the rooftop. The stairwell was narrow and exposed, each step bringing them closer to the kill zone where the sniper had just proven his deadly accuracy. But there was no debate, no hesitation. Ryan was their brother, and they were going to get him out or die trying. Marc reached the rooftop and immediately assessed the situation. Let me paint this picture for you. Ryan lay wounded in a sniper position near the edge of the roof, the same position where he'd been shot just moments earlier. Blood pooled around him, and his teammates were working frantically to stop the bleeding and stabilize him for evacuation. But they were pinned down. The enemy knew they had scored a hit, and more insurgents were maneuvering into position to finish the job. The rooftop offered little cover, just a low wall around the perimeter and the open sky above. I want you to visualize what Marc was seeing. The surrounding buildings, where any window could hide another sniper. Any rooftop could hold an enemy machine gun team. The streets below were eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that meant the locals knew something bad was about to happen and had gotten off the streets. And this is where Marc Allen Lee became a hero. He made a decision that would define the last moments of his life. He stepped directly into the position where Ryan had just been shot, the exact spot where the enemy sniper had already proven he could place an accurate shot. Listen to me. Marc knew exactly what he was doing. He was deliberately making himself a target, drawing enemy fire so his teammates could work on Ryan and prepare him for evacuation. He shouldered his Mk-48 machine gun and began engaging enemy positions. The machine gun roared to life, sending bursts of suppressive fire toward the buildings where muzzle flashes had appeared. Spent brass casings clinked against the rooftop as Marc swept his weapon across potential enemy positions. Get him ready to move. Marc shouted over the thunder of his machine gun. His teammates worked with desperate speed, applying tourniquets and bandages to Ryan's wounds, preparing him for the dangerous journey down from the rooftop and to the waiting evacuation vehicles. The enemy fire intensified. Insurgents in multiple positions had identified the rooftop as their target and were coordinating their fire. I'm telling you, bullets snapped through the air around Marc, striking the low wall with sharp cracks, sending chips of concrete flying. The air itself seemed alive with the buzz and whine of passing rounds, a sound that every combat veteran knows, the sound of death passing close enough to feel. Marc held his position, returning fire with controlled bursts, directing his fire toward the enemy positions. He was buying time, precious seconds for his teammates to save Ryan's life. The Mk-48 kicked against his shoulder with each burst. Then, in an instant that seemed to stretch into eternity, Marc was hit. An enemy round found its mark, striking him with devastating effect. The machine gun fell silent as Marc dropped to the rooftop, mortally wounded. This SEAL, who had chosen to stand in the most dangerous position on that rooftop, who had deliberately exposed himself to enemy fire to protect his brothers, had paid the ultimate price. The other SEALs immediately returned fire with everything they had, laying down a wall of lead that temporarily suppressed the enemy positions. They pulled Marc back from the exposed position, but let me tell you something heartbreaking. Even as they worked on him, even as they fought to save his life the way he'd fought to save Ryan's, they knew it was too late. Marc Allen Lee, the kid from Oregon who had refused to quit, who had fought his way back into Bud SS and become a SEAL, died there on that rooftop in Ramadi. The platoon successfully evacuated both men from the rooftop. Now here's something important you should know. Ryan Job survived, though he was left permanently blind from his wounds. He would live for 3 more years before dying in 2009 from a preventable hospital error, just as his wife was pregnant with their first child. His daughter Leah would never know her father, never hear his jokes or feel his embrace, all because of what happened on that August day in Ramadi. Marc Allen Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in action during Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was posthumously awarded the Silver Star for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against the enemy. Let me read you what the citation says: that he fearlessly exposed himself to direct enemy fire by engaging the enemy with his machine gun and was mortally wounded in the engagement. His brave actions in the line of fire saved the lives of many of his teammates. But you know what? The Battle of Ramadi continued for months after Marc's death. SEAL Team 3, devastated by the loss of their brother, continued to operate and aggressively pursue the enemy in south-central Ramadi. Their contributions, combined with those of Army, Marine, and Iraqi forces, eventually turned the tide in what had been considered an unwinnable battle. The seize, clear, hold, build strategy that Task Unit Bruiser had helped implement set the conditions for the Anbar Awakening, a movement where Sunni tribes turned against Al-Qaeda. By the end of 2006, coalition forces had successfully stabilized Ramadi, and the city that had been labeled the most dangerous in Iraq began its long road to recovery. But I have to tell you, the victory came at a terrible cost. Less than 2 months after Marc's death, on September 29, 2006, another member of SEAL Team 3 made the ultimate sacrifice. Petty Officer Second Class Michael Mansour was on a rooftop with his team when an insurgent threw a grenade into their position. The grenade bounced off Mansour's chest and fell to the floor at his feet. He was the only SEAL with a clear escape route, the only one who could have saved himself. Instead, Mansour yelled, "Grenade," and threw himself on top of it, using his body to absorb the blast. He saved the lives of his teammates but died from his wounds. Michael Mansour was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. Today, I want you to know that Marc Allen Lee's name is remembered in the SEAL community and beyond. He was portrayed in the 2014 film American Sniper, and the 4th episode of the History Channel's The Warfighters tells his story. His legacy lives on not just in tributes and memorials, but in the lives he saved that day on the rooftop in Ramadi. Those who knew Marc describe him not as a natural-born warrior or a fearless Superman, but as an ordinary man with an uncommon desire to succeed, a man who refused to quit even when things got hard. His father said he was no daredevil, just a dedicated SEAL who loved his teammates and believed in his mission. Let me tell you something about that rooftop where Marc Lee died. It still stands in Ramadi, its concrete walls pockmarked with bullet impacts, a silent witness to what happened there on August 2, 2006. The city has been rebuilt, the streets are no longer empty, and children play where firefights once raged. But for those who were there that day, for the members of Charlie Platoon who lost their brother, the memory remains as vivid as if it happened yesterday. So this is the true story of Navy SEAL Marc Allen Lee, who gave everything in the streets of Ramadi, Iraq, on August 2, 2006. His sacrifice embodies the SEAL ethos and the bond of brotherhood that defines America's Special Operations Forces. Stories like Marc's need to be told. They need to be remembered. That's why this channel exists. If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage and sacrifice in a new way, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube to share this story with more people. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Every week, I bring you true stories of extraordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. Stories of heroes like Marc Lee who deserve to be remembered. Drop a comment below and let me know. What do you think went through Marc's mind in those final moments? What would you want people to remember about you? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your thoughts. Next week, I'm covering another incredible story from the Battle of Ramadi that you won't believe. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Until then, Remember, heroes aren't born. They're made through the choices they make when everything is on the line. I'll see you in the next one.